Welcome to Unit 1, Video D. All right, now I want to start talking about self-funded or self-insurance or partially self-funded models. This is a really popular way of administering and funding employee benefits right now. And to understand self-funding, you really have to understand that historically employee benefit plans were fully insured, meaning that the insurance carriers held all the risk and the employer and the employee simply paid the insurance premium to the insurance company to cover their claims, administration, taxes, etc. So other than enrolling the employees in the benefit plans, the employer's obligation began and ended with the payment of the premium to the insurance carrier. So only more recently, really beginning in the 1980s, self-funding has become more common of a method of financing employee benefit plans. And it's really evolved under the ACA, so since the Affordable Care Act. Employers have all the underlying activities that an insurance company would have in the administering of the benefit plans, the funding, the claims, the adjudicating of claims according to all the legal requirements, federal and state legislation, keeping up with eligibility and enrollment, day-to-day plan administration, employee questions, ID cards, change in enrollment because of additions, deletions, etc. Legally mandated disclosure requirements to employees in the form of like summary benefits, federally mandated annual notices, penalties for employers if they don't communicate it, really as high as $2,000 a day per employee, I think. So communication is super important. And then annual reporting to federal government in the wake of like healthcare reform. So how does a company that self-funds their benefit operate such a plan? So because of those 10 things that I listed on the previous slide, many employers will engage an insurance company or a third-party administrator to help them with the plan administration. So insurance can still be engaged for the behind-the-scenes plan administration, but the employer is essentially on the hook for the risk of funding the claims, and that's the payout. The employer can also use something that's called stop-loss insurance to further mitigate their risk when funding a benefit plan. So let's talk a little bit about stop-loss insurance. So stop-loss insurance is essentially a way that an employer can cap their risk. So it's similar to a deductible in a health plan. What operates is that the employer pays all the claims up front up to the desired risk amount. And then when claims start to go above that specific amount, then the insurance carrier, their stop-loss insurance carrier, starts paying claims. And usually it's on a reimbursement basis. A very simplistic definition of stop-loss insurance, but really an important one to understand the basic concepts of self-funding and the partially self-funding models that are becoming more prevalent. So self-funding is really not a thing just for large companies. We're seeing a lot of smaller businesses jump onto self-funding as well. So let's take a look at what that might look like. So below is basically the piggy bank that you see where all the money is going into. So an employee contributes $300. The employer puts $700. Every month, their total contribution is $1,000 and it's spread out that way. So that money gets dropped into this green zone, and there's a certain amount of money that we know we're going to spend every month or every period of measure. Our fixed costs, things like third-party administrator fees, our PPO discount programs, employer protection insurance premiums, or stop-loss insurance premiums. So those are all things that we know we're going to have to pay for in order to operate this self-funded plan. So what we don't know are the claims, and that's really the purpose of stop-loss insurance. And we have two types of stop-loss insurance. One is specific stop-loss insurance, which is based on any one person, so like a particular employee. So you might have an employee that's got diabetes and now has gone into renal failure. Just a super expensive employee that's taking up a lot of your claims dollars, a lot of money that's in this pot. So you might have specific stop loss insurance to help deal with that extreme payout that you're paying on one employee. So you might have $200,000 in claims, and you may have a self-insured model that at at $30,000 in claims, then you stop paying and the stop loss insurance starts to pay out. So you may pay the first $30,000 and they would pay the additional 170 for that year. An aggregate stop loss, on the other hand, deals with total claims that you're paying out. So say you thought you were going to pay out 5 million in claims. And so you have like this expectation that you're going to pay out, on average, $5 to $10 million in claims a year. And so you go ahead and you get stop loss insurance to kick in after $5 million. Well, now you have claims that are in excess of 7 million. Well, you'd still be responsible for paying that full 7 million. It's just you would get reimbursed that $2 million difference by the insurance carrier. So what happens in a year where your claims are actually under what you thought they would be and you have some money left over in here? Well, the rules, employee benefit rules, do allow that money to then be reinvested in employee benefits. But it's not something that can just go back and be, spread out in other places of the business. Usually when we look at aggregate stop loss insurance, we do like an aggregate accommodation that breaks it up by month, so you can project whether you need more protection or not. And so it's not like at the end of the year we tally up your claims. It's done on a periodic basis. All right, so I want you to take a look at this question. So companies possess limited budgets to fund employee benefits. You can think of maybe a self-insured or self-funded company. So from an employee's perspective, which employee benefit practices should be funded and what are easily dispensable? Now, when you respond to some of these questions, think about it from an employee perspective, but also from a company representative perspective. And then think about what the difference might be in those responses and why. And go ahead and type your answers in the boxes provided. All right, it's been a minute since I've given you a brain break. So if you need a brain break, go ahead and take one. Go ahead and pause it. Otherwise, I'm going to keep going. And we're going to jump into the next video, which will start to pick up some of the regulation issues.